an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering One Piece, episodes 490 and 490, wait, is it 490? Yes, 490 and 491, sorry everybody. Mighty leaders face each other down, heralding the new era, and landing at the Maiden Island, the harsh reality falls upon Luffy. In these two fucking bummer episodes, we get to see what happens when the violence is over and now there is a power vacuum. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Florian for commissioning this episode. Yeah, these were such a bummer, guys. They just were. Like, there is some funny, cheery stuff mixed in there, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, what we've got going on is like people being harassed and terrorized. Folks who think that everything is going to be great now and just getting got, like, without any warning a lot of the time. We find out that there's, like, a bunch of islands that Whitebeard was protecting. And he, you know, it's not like this place has social media. So even though there's a good number of people who are aware of the conflict and stuff, the news that he has actually died doesn't necessarily travel right away. So there's whole villages and stuff where they have been relying low-key on his flag flying above them. And then to find out that he's dead from the people who are now attacking them, I mean, that is a real bummer wake-up call. And I just can't help but wonder, like, if Whitebeard had considered all of this, would it have mattered to him? Would he have made any different choices? I would guess probably not. You know, it's not his first rodeo. I'm sure that in a way he's always considered these sorts of consequences. But it gets me to thinking, like, when you are a captain that has amassed the kind of power that he has, maybe you need to, like, really get some things in place for if something were to happen to you. And just, you know, potentially in the future, not saying it's going to happen now, but an insurance policy of some sort. And probably, originally, this is my guess anyway, Ace was going to be Whitebeard's insurance policy. I don't know that, but you know, after everything with him running off and trying to track down Blackbeard and how all of that happened, probably want to update things there. So then I think it might be Marco. That's who seemed to be his sort of right hand on the battlefield. And I don't know exactly what's going on at the moment with the pirates that were in the fight. Mostly what we see is that the people who are directly involved with Luffy going to Maiden Island next time. But Marco, I don't know where he is off to. Like, what are the Whitebeard pirates just licking their wounds, I'm assuming? I would really like it if they would get out here and get into things a little bit. Not like, I know that they have just been in the midst of this terrible battle, and so that is unfair. But also, it just feels like you have an obligation. And I'm always going to side with the little people. That's who I am. I am the little people. I have no power in the world. Things that come on high happen to me, and I am not able to, like, stop them. I can determine how I cope with them to a point. But it's the same thing, like, with the small folk in Song of Ice and Fire. They're the ones who really tend to suffer, and they're only seen as pieces on a board They are not seen as people. Their pain and their suffering is completely hypothetical. And I will admit that even in the grand scheme, as much as I am a little person, because I am a privileged white straight American, I am still slightly more important than a lot of other people that exist too. There's a hierarchy. But I always really feel for folks who just get swept up in a conflict and they don't have... I think there's just a sort of thing that a lot of us have believed from being children and understanding like the way that wars happened in the U.S., that you have two armies who duke it out and then whoever wins of those armies. And like, there are so many civilian casualties in most wars. It's astronomical. I feel like I remember reading during a test that I took when I was in college that somewhere around 98% or it was definitely in the 90 percentile of casualties in wars are civilians. They are not people who are part of either side's government or army or anything like that. And it's so consistent, you know. This is just the sort of thing that has remained true throughout such a period of time that it's taken for granted in a way that I wish we wouldn't. And I wish we'd stop and really think about what that means, because it's just devastating. And that's really kind of what the main focus is here. So the out of the two episodes, when we start, we see all of the people around. Like, I think that some of the folks are in Sabaody, but we go to a bunch of different areas and really get to see like different buildings in the background. And there tends to be a sort of theme to the way they're dressed that gives us a clue that a lot of them are in specific areas. We also see some other Marines headquarters and whatnot. And they are hearing that the Marines have been victorious. And this is a really well done, like, unrolling of the actual conflict that comes later. Because at first, it's just pure celebration, right? All of these Marines who hear that they are on the side of the winners really feel like fucking badasses. We've got confetti flying in the streets. We've got people dancing and feasting and praying, thanking the gods. Like, there is just unfettered joy because people think this is it. It's a wrap. We are not worried anymore. And there's like a kind of striking image of Sabaody a little bit later after the news is delivered, where the square that everybody had been sort of gathered in with the huge TV screens and speakers and everything, they had been watching and you know, breathless, waiting for any news. And then as things like turn a corner, all of this confetti is falling and you go back to that spot and there isn't a soul standing there. Like, everybody, they are done with needing information. They have heard the Navy won and that is it. And what I think is so interesting about this is, like, one could argue that this is sort of symbolic of the fact that they hear that, okay, we won, game over, like, that's it. And that they should have stayed and found out more so that they could be better prepared. But I really have to point out that the Navy is not disseminating any other information. So even had they tried to inform themselves, they are at the mercy of whatever transmission they're getting, which is going to be heavily edited and biased. Stares at camera. This is the thing, guys. And I know that this is by no means news to anybody. But it is really grim for me, the way that we get our information. I think a lot of people are tempted to blame it on social media and forget that this is how it's always been. Any major news outlet has always had to be owned by somebody. And whoever owned it had a lot of fucking money and a lot of power and were able to squash things they didn't want or have articles rewritten to a certain bent to convince people reading of a certain perspective. It's just been the way things are. Even before there were news outlets, anybody who had the power over a large number of people could tell all of them at once, here's the story we're going with, and send them out into the world to disseminate this misinformation. Go into bars and just talk at the bar and have this person seem like they're just a random citizen. Or say, I was there when blank, blank, blank happened. And it is a really frightening thing for me anytime that I let myself think about it for too long, how easy it is to distribute misinformation. It's not just the fact that some people want to think in a certain way, and so feeding them what they already want to hear is going to be like magic. It's also the fact that so many people lack basic critical thinking skills. And you guys know what I mean. There's just a sense of like this. It's what's sort of funny about it is that when you circle around and look at some of the folks who are saying a lot of the things that, for me, I disagree with, the difficulties that they have match up with mine. Like, we both are concerned about the same things, but they are operating from such a complete place of misinformation that they are coming to a totally opposite conclusion. And what I mean by this is just something like, for example, medical care. Let's talk about that. Okay. So in the United States, we don't have any. It's very bad. You get it through your employer or you pay a fortune for it, like privately. There's the public marketplace, but that's also incredibly expensive. For me and Owen, it's about $400 a month, and it's not good coverage. We have like a $7,000 deductible, which is insane. And that is how it works. Now, right-wingers have a massive issue with big pharma, which is part of the whole, like, not getting a vaccination, that whole thing, right? They don't trust big pharma. They're out to get us, which, don't get me wrong, big pharma is corrupt AF. I'm not trying to defend them, but there is a point where it's like, to what end do they want to give us poison in our vaccines? Like, come on. And these people are on the right track in a way, but instead of seeing the fact that we could all have basic health care like they do in other parts of the world very successfully, if we were to just reallocate the funds to go there instead of to our military, if we were to tax the rich in a way that is effective and fair, if we were to actually see the charges that are real from a hospital instead of the incredibly inflated charges that we see that lead us to believe that caring for everybody would be impossible. All of this adds up to the fact that somebody doesn't want us to have it because they need to make money off of us dying, right? That's what it adds up to. But if you take it to that place of we could afford to do this for everybody, if we just, that's where you hit the block. Because immediately, then they start to think that you're like a communist. Socialist at best, communist at worst. Frankly, I am a communist, so fucking whatever. But they balk at the idea of money being taken from the rich because they have been programmed to think that they have something in common with the rich. They have no understanding that this is a completely unfair system that deeply penalizes anybody living in poverty and disproportionately rewards those who already have more money than they could ever use in several lifetimes. And they parrot back these same talking points about how nobody should get to steal the money that they earned fair and square. One, we're not talking about your money. We're talking about the money of people who aren't paying their fair share and who, secondly, did not earn it fair and square at all. But those two facts, one, the taxes are unequal right now and need to be fixed. They don't believe that. And two, They genuinely think that they are several steps from being a millionaire themselves, and that eventually those taxes will like hurt them somehow. And they don't want to look at the fact that when Trump went into office and changed tax brackets, he made it so that the wealthy got another break and the poor's tax payments got higher. These people have this like basic idea about how everything works, and yet as much as they are like correct in the things that they are upset about and zeroing in on, they are accepting information from a source that is plainly biased, and they don't see it. And I know I'm preaching to the choir. If you're listening to this, you know this, and you're probably bored, and I'm sorry. But that's what really struck me here, is just the fact that the Marines seem to have a complete lock on any information. It doesn't look like anybody else has any control. And that, for me, is something that we should really start to address. Like, if I were a pirate at this point, unsurprising, since I'm a podcaster, I would probably try and find ways to break into the system and find ways to disseminate information that is correct, actual footage of things. I would be working on that a lot. And I say this with the full acknowledgement that I say that, but is that what I'm doing right now in the world with actual misinformation? No. I mean, I guess you could say with the podcast, I did have the honor of, at one point, a major post that went viral asked, what made you change into a socialist? And 2 people tagged on Spoiled Podcast. So, you know what? Maybe a little bit. Maybe I'm doing it a little bit. I kind of like it. I'm going to tell myself that. But the way that they have got a complete, like, just private TV station in a style of like the Capitol in the Hunger Games, that shit is so dangerous, man. That is just a really frightening prospect. And as frightening as it is, it's like maybe 2-3 steps from where we currently exist as a people, because there are like 4 companies that own all media when you boil it down to the, like, you know, the biggest owners. It's like we're so oh my God, I wish that I knew how to fight something like this. I really do. But it just seems so hopeless sometimes, so overwhelming, and so cleverly built to keep us from being able to make any significant changes, that there are times where I feel like, what's the point, you know? Florian's in the chat. Florian says, because of daylight savings, time between US and the EU are 1 hour closer, and I'm not used to it. Oh, right. You guys do have daylight savings as well, right? But it just happens at a different point. I feel like I remember reading that it's like for a month and a half, we're out of sync, and then it goes back to being in sync because you guys do it later. Which just, can we all just fucking shelve daylight savings, for God's sake? I really, just, what are we doing? It fucks us all up every year. Can we just not? Everybody that I have talked to agrees. But no, we cannot. So anyway, it's really tough because, like, at first I'm watching it and I'm seeing everybody cheering, and I'm already like, y'all fools, because they're cheering for the government. 3 cheers for the world government. And I'm over here like, that isn't exactly, really, they're not on your side, even though they can tell themselves that. But these people don't know yet, you know? And I gotta say, like, the pirates, it's not really, like, easy to send a message about what side they're on, because they aren't all on the same side either. There are bad guy pirates out there that are out here fucking people up. And there are some decent ones that want to keep that sort of thing from happening. And it's, you know, we saw the way that, like, Teach just decided to fucking turn into a supervillain. And that's not a great look. So why wouldn't people side with the Marines over that display? I can't really blame them for making the assumptions that they do. But it's just really hard to watch them get this excited. And this is when we go to the 7 ships out at sea near Marineford. And it's all of the big players who are kind of figuring out what comes next. It says, staring at the dust of the battle rising above Marineford, evidence of the workings of justice in the great pirate era, they sense the restlessness of the changing times. And they're talking, some of them are saying it's over, but there are others who are just it's not over. Are you kidding me? And it depends on who we're seeing the reaction that they have. Drake is being told that this is all over, and he says, well, the Navy has to change also. Then there's a guy who's a mobster who says Whitebeard's territory will sink in a sea of blood in this whirlpool, which he is fucking correct. And let's see, Blackbeard is the key. He's gained new followers and Whitebeard's power. I'm sure they're going to reign for a while. And it was hard for me to tell how he felt about it because this character never stops smiling. So I always feel like he's saying things that sound pretty terrible, but he looks pretty happy about it. And I don't know what side he falls on, and I don't know if that's on purpose or if things were going a slightly different way in the original and it's just the dub that kind of changes the tone. But whatever the case, so let's see, who have we got here? I'm looking at the list that Florian made for me, a total sweetheart. Oh my God, there are so many people though, seriously. Katarina Devon. She is just the one that keeps arresting me. Every time I see her face, I am really excited because she's just so different looking than so many other woman characters, but she hasn't gotten enough to do. Florian says the revolutionaries seem to be the only ones that are onto the Marine shit and want to do something about it, so we have heard, Eva or Dragon are with them. Florian says, oh no, I have not added them. Florian, please don't worry about it. But he says he thinks I'm talking about Oppo. Okay. Then we go to the girl who's got the pink hair, and she's the one that's yelling, it's all his fault. I'll track him down soon enough. Let's go to the new world. And I'm really excited to see everybody gathered up against Blackbeard, just for the record. Apu is the one with the piano teeth. According to this, anyway, it looks like. The guy I was talking about was the one who's got the black voice actor, and he has the super wide neck, and he's just always, grinning from ear to ear, and looks like a fucking wrestler. But Apu, I think it's Apu, he says, let's see, because he's kind of got a different take on a lot of this. He says, what the hell is going on? And his people are like, what are you talking about? And he says, that guy will become his enemy. Is he really going to save him? I'm talking about Trafalgar Law. He's known for his brutality. He wouldn't save Straw Hat Luffy if there wasn't some catch. And I'm really curious what that could be. Then we go to Hawkins, who's trying to do a card reading here. I just want to mention, too, with Hawkins, I find it really fascinating the way that he has a spot to place his cards in front of him. I know that this is something that probably nobody cares about but me. But look, I am somebody who likes to do tarot pulling. And it's difficult sometimes if you've got a big spread and you don't have a huge empty table to manage like all of your cards. And the fact that he just has these like tiny little stands in front of him in midair that just hover, that he can just place a card on and keep track of. Jealous, deeply, deeply jealous. And he says that he's trying to see whether or not Luffy is still alive. And the cards are not... this is interesting, guys. I'm doing a thing that I haven't done in a minute. Just to give you guys an understanding of why I might be sort of stammering over certain sentences as I'm reading them. I watched these 2 episodes on Hulu. But as I am covering it and talking to y'all, I am watching on Funimation. And I forgot that Funimation, even with the dub, has the original subtitles, while Hulu has subtitles that match the English dub. So I'm looking at this, and the way that it says in the dub is, I am trying to find out from the cards whether Luffy is alive or dead, but the cards refuse to say. And in the original, it looks like the sub says, I'm trying to determine the odds of whether Luffy is dead or alive. Let's see, I'm going to read it exactly so you guys can get a sense of this. I've been trying to see the odds that Luffy's still alive, but it never reaches 0. That's a very different vibe to me. Like, the cards refuse to say means things are uncertain. But if it never reaches 0, that means pretty much that he's still alive. Which I guess uncertain... that isn't really saying that he's still alive. That's just a different thing. I think it's interesting every time that I see some change that kind of alters the meaning a little bit. So, yeah, let's see. There's a couple other dudes. I can't remember this guy's name. He's got like a wild sort of, I don't know if he's like his second in command, but the dude has long white hair all the way down to his butt. And he has like tattoos around his mouth that look like the threading of a needle when you sew somebody's mouth shut for, like a corpse or something. And they're talking about how it's really over, isn't it? And here comes fucking Eustace, I think is his name. I feel like I remember his name because I was like, really? That doesn't feel like it fits. But he says, what's over? Like, Blackbeard is the one in control now. It's never over because anytime, and again, I'm going to compare these lines. The new force who emerged during the war, that Blackbeard is quite a guy. And in the dub, he says anytime a big, like a mean man is taken down or something like that, a bigger, meaner man comes to take his place. So yeah, he said before it was Whitebeard, Red Hair, Kaido, and Big Mom. Have we met them? Kaido, what was it? Redhead and Big Mom? We haven't met them, right? He says, but since one of them is dead, the world is out of balance and no one can predict the consequences. This is the beginning of a new era, the likes of which no one has ever seen. Y'all, I cannot tell you. Oh, wow. Florian says red hair is Shanks. I didn't even realize. How am I that stupid? I cannot believe myself. But I didn't realize that Shanks was like that high up on the list. That's much more powerful than I really thought. But damn, okay. You guys, this is just so... The more that I watch One Piece, the more I realize how much Cradle pulled from One Piece. Like, it was just such a clear, direct, like, inspiration. And I'm not mad at that. I just want to be clear. Like, I'm not trying to be like, oh, now Cradle is invalid. But it really is kind of funny once you begin to step back and look at, like, the monarchs and the way that that's structured and how similar that is here. So we go back to Marineford, and there is this scene where, first of all, there's a bunch of these fucking pelicans who are disseminating information everywhere. And the announcer is saying, and I'm going to compare what it is that he says in the sub with mine, but the way that he said it on mine was that in the way that history usually works, some facts get glossed over and people only remember the major points. And so a lot of people were not considering what was going to come next. And yeah, this is close. Like most of history, some facts are trimmed off as the news goes around, and just the two words Navy victory stand out. The people in their excitement at the news failed to notice something. And this is when we have the first arrival of a pirate who's got 3 ponytails going down his back, and he is wearing a cowboy hat and using an old rifle, and there's like I think he's got kind of a poncho thing on, so we're definitely going Old West, it feels like, with this guy. But it was interesting because he is like shooting guns and just sort of yelling at the populace from this balcony. And at first, I thought this guy was arriving to just start to like wreak havoc. But seeing what he's actually saying, which is, did you guys not hear that the One Piece is real? That Gold Roger wasn't lying? I mean, we got to get on the water right now. Let's get the fuck out of here. And it was sort of funny to me because everybody is like down in the square, cowering and sad at the fact that these guys are like, you know, shooting guns, and I thought they were about to do some damage. But actually, they're announcing that they're taking off. One would think might be good news for these people, but I don't know how much these people have gotten used to a violent presence that they know, at least, versus being left defenseless and then a whole other ship of pirates showing up and plundering them. You know, maybe that's the thing. It's just the devil you know. But yeah, I really took that as like a different way. But then we get the other way pretty shortly. We have a whole bunch of dudes who descend on Food Vaulton, which is just such a funny name, you guys. And they immediately are just like, yeah, you guys are dependent on Whitebeard, and if you haven't heard, he's fucking dead. So we can just basically do whatever we want now. Okay, so this is the moment where we go back to Sengoku, who is standing there with his goat. Guys, I know that this goat has likely come up before. I feel it in my gut that we've seen this goat before, but I don't remember it, and it's very distracting to me. Like, I keep just thinking, what a weird little tether this is, this goat. But anyway, so he's there just sort of looking up at the damage that was done in this war, and he gets approached by one of his men, who he's like completely wrapped in bandages, by the way. But this dude who comes up is got bright green hair, and he's wearing pink pants and shoes and shirt made out of like the same striped blue and white material. And this guy is apparently sharing some information from Impel Down, which I hadn't like the consideration that they are not up on the news from Impel Down had not occurred to me. And he's like, Magellan is under intensive care because he got beaten really, really badly and was almost killed. But he is blaming himself for the whole thing. They said that if he could move now, he'd kill himself. And Sengoku says, don't let him do such a stupid thing. And then what has been going on at the prison? Allow me to tell you the condition as it stands. It is especially bad at level 6, literally a disaster. And we find out that the way things went back when was that Blackbeard went into the prisons And he told everybody who was like in each cell, because they're grouped together, and it looks like there's like, 10 or 15 people per cell. It looks like what he told them was, all of you have, just like until the last man standing, go at each other, and whoever is left alive is going to get to join my crew. And I was sort of wondering if these people were going to push back against that a little bit more. But the prisoners that are left at Impel Down are not being treated in the same way as the prisoners that came out with Luffy. There's a real sort of suggestion here, and I don't know if this is like something that is actually meaningful and explained, or if it's simply the way it's working because of how the story has to go. But what it feels like is that the prisoners who were particularly decent and not necessarily worthy of being imprisoned the way that they are here, they're the ones that all left with Luffy, and that the people that are actual dangerous criminals are all left. And so when they are presented with this, like, kill each other and one of you gets to come with me, they all respond with a lot of excitement. And the animation is very specific. The way that they're depicted is not, like, at first, it's not even quite human. We have a lot of sort of impressions of eyes and faces and hands, but they're all done in a way that's almost like animalistic, and tongues hanging out and lolling. There's just not a lot of, like, feeling of them being people until after he makes the announcement. And then when we see them, like, one of these guys has literally got pointed teeth when he's screaming, like, all right, let's do this. Who have I got to kill first? Like, there's more than one dude with pointed teeth. And it's just like the whole way that these prisoners are being depicted, it's just really, really different. And we see, like, the camera go from one to the other of the people that he wound up actually teaming up with, and the shadows of the folks in the cell falling on them, and them looking really excited about it. And it seems to me like the suggestion here is that absolutely nobody there stands a chance, because it's just a given that the folks we have seen him with are going to win, because there is no contest at all. So yeah, he says 4 prisoners were taken: San Juan Wolf, Avalo Pizarro, Vasco Shot, and Katarina Devon. But there are obviously more prisoners missing from level 6. Which means, and he looks down, and the goat is like chewing at him, and he's sort of like distracted. But Sengoku finishes, I understand, then there are more escapees from level 6. And we see the, like, all of the gates on these prisons being opened, and them just sort of wandering out. So apparently, like, I'm confused about whether or not he actually did do the, like, fight each other to the death. If all of the people who are actually getting out did kill their cellmates and just weren't chosen, or if, like, Blackbeard did that to just cause chaos and then didn't follow through with it. But there's, like, a lot of people left. Florian says they are in prison in level 6 where Croc and Ace was, so the worst of the worst, or at least strongest. Gotcha. Okay. And he says, Sengoku says, if even one of the prisoners from level 6 sneaks into a country somewhere, the people will be in grave danger. Check to see how many there were, their names, get a most wanted list out now. And this guy balks a little bit and says, I'm really sorry, but I was given orders from the world government directly to keep everything that happened at level 6 totally secret. And Sengoku kind of, like, loses his patience here. And he just says, I don't give a damn. And I'm going to be honest, guys. this is an interesting change from the subtitles that I don't know how to interpret it, because in the dub, that's what he says, like, I don't give a damn, which in my opinion sounds like I'm going to do what the fuck I said. I have no interest in what you just told me. It's not relevant. In this sub, it says, damn them, which does not imply rebellion of any kind. It more seems just like the frustrated outburst of somebody who is like going to do what he was told, but he's going to let you know that he's really pissed about it. And so I'm not totally sure what way Sengoku's going to go with this, because if it's just damn them and he's actually listening to them, I mean, it makes sense that he would be that he would just be loyal and take orders and obedient to the world government because of his position. But I also kind of hope that he just like decides, screw the reputation of the government. We're going to do what we need to save these people. Because honestly, what I would like is to respect Sengoku a little bit more. I don't feel like I know him well enough, and I don't need him to be like a likable person. That's not it at all. But I would like to feel that there is some sort of moral code that he operates by, and that the lives of these people matter to him in a way that supersedes the reputation of the government, you know? So just gotta sort of wait and see on that and find out where that goes. Then we have a sort of interesting thing with fucking Moria, who he has been, it seems, gripped up by the pacifistas. There's like a lot of explosions happening. And Doflamingo is standing over him and is telling him, like, let's be real. You know that you are too weak to be a warlord. And I don't know. I was a little bit surprised about this, you guys, because Moria's power, to me, seems pretty impressive. And Doflamingo being so dismissive of it, I was like, but why? I mean, I don't know. He's doing something with it. And he says, died in the war of the best sounds better than done in by the government. And Moria says, whose idea was this? Sengoku? And Doflamingo says, no, someone much higher up the ladder. And Moria just looks upset, but we don't actually see what happens here. And I'm super curious what that's all about. So then we go back to the submarine where they're taking care of Luffy, the one with Law. And we've got this fucking Beppo the bear. He's down here crying about how hot it is and sounding like Michael Cera. He says, I don't like it when we submerge. We have to stay in such a cramped place with messy people. And he says this with a real sort of side eye, but they take exception to this. And he says, well, I have no choice but to bear it, but I'm going to make you guys feel it too. Oh my God, I said I have no choice but to bear it. Oh my God, I just heard that. Sorry guys, I didn't do it on purpose. Yeah, so he just starts rubbing his face on them. He is very funny. I don't know what it is like we're doing with him ultimately, but he's getting his sweat all over them, and it is very funny to me. So when they surface, that is when Hancock lands on the deck of the ship. And of course, Beppo is immediately like, who the fuck are you? Oh God. Because he isn't exactly he's not like, I don't want to call him a coward, but he's definitely somebody who tries to avoid conflict. I get the sense, you know? So yeah, he jumps outside and is looking around and really excited that he's, you know, finally getting fresh air and stuff again. And he looks side to side and nothing is there. It's one of those funny things where, like, you know, there's no possible way you run onto that deck the way that he did and don't see this giant coiled snake. But he has to check left and right, and then in front of him is the huge coiled snake with a skull, like, draped over its head, adding a whole other level of creepiness to it. And they look up and they see one of the Navy ships next to them, which absolutely dwarfs them, by the way. Teeny, teeny, tiny. They just look so insignificant next to it. And they look up and they see Boa Hancock, and knowing that she's on the side of the Marines, so they think, they are very upset, feeling like, well, shit, we went through all of this and we fucking got caught anyway. And they're worried, but she says, don't worry, I turned all the Navy soldiers to stone, and we get to see them all with their little heart eyes falling all over her, and it is just really funny still. That's never really going to get old for me, I don't think. And she wants to know, like, Luffy's status and whether he's going to recover. And Beppo is just like, wait, how did you know we were going to surface here? I thought the Navy was after us and that you were with them. And she says, I made Salome follow you underwater. So, yeah, what they wind up doing is heading over to Maiden Island so that there is some place for them to hole up for a little while and for Luffy to recover. When Law comes out, he says, like, I've done everything I could to stabilize him, but whether he actually recovers depends entirely on his own will to live, basically. And you can see, like, how devastated Boa is, and then you hear Eva yelling, it's no wonder Strawboy couldn't even stand up at Impelled Down once. And all of the people on board with Eva are, like, cheering and saying how much they owe to Luffy. Because of him, we owe getting out of Impelled Down to him, and now we are going to be able to make the Kamabaka Kingdom come to life and be real. So they are like, all right, to the new Kama's home from New Kama land. And they're waving. I love this moment when the guys on deck are like, who are they? What the fuck is going on? And Boa just has to explain. She says they've, snuck on the ship. They were his allies. So Eva comes down and does a little somersault because he can't help it. I'm surprised he doesn't somersault everywhere, honestly. And he does a little recap about how much Luffy sacrificed in order to save Ace, and the fact that Ace died anyway, if there's no justice in the world, and it really should not be a surprise that he completely lost his marbles, basically. Like, after everything he had been through. So I'm trying not to skip anything here, you guys, because this is sort of setting up what happens next episode. And Boa, what a tragedy. I wish I could take his place. Poor Luffy. And then she just starts sobbing, and the guys are over here like, oh, I'm jealous. It would be really nice to have her care about you that much. And Law admits he's not a friend of Luffy's. He said, I didn't have to save him at all. If you're wondering about my motivation, I can come up with a reason. And Eva doesn't want it. Eva says, no, that's okay. Sometimes your instinct tells you what to do. And I was like, no, Eva. He was about to offer. He did not say anything about instinct. He has spoken the word reason, which is that is just a whole different energy. Let the man speak. But of course, no, we can't find out this soon how that went. So I'm spending a lot of time on this episode because really, when you get down to it, guys, this is the episode where, like, anything happens. The next episode is, in my opinion, the same conversation like 4 times, and then Luffy having a meltdown is really what happens. So first, let's go over there and deal with his complete, like, implosion here. The main thing is the fact that we have to get permission from the ladies on Maiden Island to get into the harbor with all of these men. At first, Hancock wants Law to come ashore. And that's when, what is her name? Niao? I think Niao? She says, essentially, like, what the fuck has he got that our own doctors haven't got? If you can give me any reason why he should be allowed on our island, I would be willing to listen. But as far as we know, he doesn't have access to, like, any technology or medicine that we haven't also got access to. So what exactly are we putting ourselves out like that for him for, when he hasn't, like, we aren't supposed to let men on the island. That's like a firm law, and we can't just be throwing that to the side because you want to. And so eventually the fact that they're even in the harbor or the bay, I can't remember exactly what they call it, even that starts to become a problem. And there's a lot of conversation. And when I say it's like the same argument over and over, it's really between her and Hancock, because they are just at odds right now over what to do. Hancock is in love with Luffy, and so it's like no question to her that she's going to go and help nurse him, that she's going to get food and bring it to him and serve him. All of this is just a given. And she keeps having to be reminded as her position, of her position as princess of this island that excludes men, and the fact that they shouldn't even be speaking to all of the men. Like, there's a few different instances where maidens are bringing supplies to the men on the ships and talking to them for just an extra second. It's nothing. And they're getting yelled at. And just one of them gets told, like, have some self-respect. When all she said was, like, make sure to wait your turn. Like, she was just giving instructions, and she's being treated like she's such a whore for this, you know? And that's really, when I say that there's the same argument over, that's what I'm talking about. It's just, well, we need to help them, but they're men, so we can't. Well, we need to let them on the island, but they're men, so we can't. Well, we need to do something for them. Well, they're men, so you aren't allowed to. She's not allowed to. Just back and forth and back and forth. And it's sort of frustrating because I just sort of want to be like, why is this really, I guess this is the safest place for them because the Marines are still thinking that she is on their side. I'm not really sure how long that can possibly continue. That's the thing, is like, she really got in the way to keep Luffy safe a lot during that fight. And it's hard to tell how much of that was actually witnessed by anybody. Like, is it going to be reported back that she just completely threw in for him? Or I don't know how long it will take and whether they'll think to come here for Luffy, you know? Oh yeah, this is when the ladies come up with all of the food. And it's the giantess who is saying, please don't push and wait for your turn. And, Afalandra gets yelled at. Don't talk to men. Luffy is the exception because of the princess's decree. And I'm kind of concerned, guys, that what we're getting here is going to be the eventual, reversal of the law against men. Look, I know that probably it's supposed to be, a good thing. But I can't help but think it isn't. You know what I'm saying? I just really feel that maybe we should just have some islands that are all women and have that be how it is sometimes. And let that continue to be a refuge away. That's all I'm going to say about that. So that's just my concern, is that like, as everything sort of progresses, I don't know if Luffy is going to be able to leave this place by the time, like, I'm still imagining his friends trying to meet up with him. I don't even know if that's true, because the way that we saw things going in a lot of their POVs, they were just trying to like get by, and they weren't actually traveling. So that may not be even a factor. There may be something else that like winds up bringing them back together. But I'm starting to really believe, I thought, okay, we're going to have the arc without everybody in Impel Down. And then we got to the Marine headquarters and it continued, and I was like, okay, well then we'll have to wait for this to resolve. And now that's basically resolved, and I'm starting to be like, are we getting another arc without his friends? Like, how long are we going to be separated? This has been a really, really long time now. But okay, Luffy, for his part, who's being kept on the equivalent of like life support, is really struggling. We see him sort of having these like nightmares, remembering like Ace telling him that you always do such crazy shit and you never listen to me. We have him witnessing Ace's death, and just like kind of there's a real sense of like PTSD basically happening here. And eventually he comes out of the room and the whole ship is sort of rocking because of the emotions that he's having, I think. But he stumbles out, complete head to toe bandages, covered in sweat, and he just says Ace, and all of a sudden comes like there's an explosion from the submarine. He comes flying out of it, and he hits the ground like a wrecking ball, which, really should kill him, but he's Luffy, so it doesn't. And it just leads to Law saying, like, if he keeps moving around like he is, he's going to break his stitches, and then he probably will bleed out. But it's suggested, I think that the implication is supposed to be that his emotions from his grief cause him to be able to like just break out of the top of the submarine, which I have a lot of questions about, and I'm wondering whether that's something that's going to occur again or what, because that's a wild ability to suddenly have. And he screams, "Where's Ace?" And everything like shakes in that moment. And the like whole, he is coming to terms with what happened, but it's sort of happening alongside him arguing with himself that it wasn't real, that it couldn't have gone that way. And the like amount of damage that he's doing, he basically like punches a tree in half and is standing there with like blood pouring off his fist. This dude is not in a good place. And when he punches that tree, you see his like eyes, and they're doing that thing where the pupils are like multiple lines, and then all of a sudden he sort of comes back to himself and his eye becomes solid again, and he looks up and says, wait, where am I? Maybe that was all a dream after all. And then all of a sudden everything turns like black and white as he remembers again, and he just dissolves into sobbing tears. And when his friends gather around him, like he gets very defensive and is like, you guys think that I don't know what's going on? Do you think that I am in denial about it, that I don't believe it. I know that this isn't a dream. I know that this is all really happening. If it were a dream, I would have woken up by now. And I just really, guys, I'm going to be honest. I'm not trying to say that this display from Luffy is unjustified, but I am saying that the casualness with which Luffy dismissed Ace's Viver card being so small and on fire way back when things were really starting to go left, in the light of his reaction here, is surprising. I feel like maybe he should have given more of a shit when all of that was initially going on. That's all I'm saying, is just, you put things off, man, in a weird way that felt out of character to me. And I don't know if we're going to find out, or maybe there was a mention even already of Ace having told him, not to try and jump in and help. But I just kind of keep thinking about the moment and how it felt false to me at the time. And seeing the way that Luffy is losing his mind over losing Ace now, I am sort of like, well, if he meant this much to you, then why weren't you more worried, dude? I'm not trying to say necessarily that things would have gone a totally different way if he had cared. Saying cared is harsh. If he had taken action. But maybe they would have. I don't know. So anyway, all right, I've got to wrap up. But thank you guys so much again for commissioning these, for hanging out with me, for listening. I really hope y'all are enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.